the multiple mass shootings over the course of the past 2 weeks, or the course of the past week, I should say. I mean, we've had 7 mass shootings in this country over the past 7 days. So we've had a mass shooting per day. And we've had 102 mass shootings in the US this year alone already. And we're barely, we're not even all the way through March yet. So we're averaging a mass shooting per day in this country, as we do every year, it seems, for, since I was a kid, seemingly, since for the past decade, at least, it's seemingly been this way. And you think you get a little bit of a break during a pandemic, but it hasn't eased up really. And we are, luckily, I mean, there's less people gathering. So, you feel like a benefit of that is going to be less chances for people to be harmed and put in harm's way like that. But over the past 2 weeks, we've had, there was last week in Atlanta, there was a mass shooting, white supremacist. It was largely an anti-Asian, hate crime, as far as I'm concerned. I don't care what the news media wants to say, otherwise, or their debate about it. It's clear as day. This is, anti-Asian. It's racially, it's racist motivation, misogynist, as well. And, I believe, so there were 8 victims. There were eight people killed in the shootings in Atlanta and right outside of Atlanta. And 7 of those people were women. 6 of them were women of Asian descent. I believe 4 were Korean, and I don't know the ethnicity of the other victims off the top of my head. And then we had, just yesterday in Boulder, Colorado, there was a mass shooting at a grocery store in Boulder, Colorado. 10 people were killed, and the shooter was taken alive. In both of these situations, the shooter in the second case he was also a white male, but he was he was an American Muslim back, religiously, but he was naturalized from Syria, and that's what we know so far. I'm not going to say either of their names. I'm not going to say the names of these shooters. I'm not going to be showing their images, because I just don't see a reason to try to give them any kind of attention. That's in a lot of these cases, these people are seeking attention and see the news coverage of these mass shootings and want to use it as a way to gain infamy. And I'm going to try to be responsible in not trying to allow that to happen and be a platform for that. So you won't hear me say their names or show their images if I can help it. And we'll see, if folks let me know how you feel about that in the comments, by all means. I've seen other organizations that will say the name one time, show an image, sometimes one time, and not do it again after that. So, I may do something like that just for people to have information, to be able to provide information, but not to try to, to help these people gain any kind of notoriety or infamy. And so, the situation with these mass shootings is that when you live in this country, sadly, you start to grow accustomed to this. It becomes, you grow an immunity to it. You build up a tolerance to these things. And it's like, if if it's not tens of people dying, it seems like it barely registers to most people. When you're not talking, when just 2 or 3 people are killed, when it's just 1 or 2 people killed, 4 or 5 people shot, it seems like people we don't even notice those anymore in this country. And it's really just these, like, 10, when 5+ people are being killed, and or it's a string of killings in rapid succession. It's like it has to be these it's just the level of carnage that has to be attained. I don't even know how to describe it for people to to even notice these things and be outraged by this. In this country, in America, we've built up a horrendous tolerance to these, these situations, these massacres at this point. And so it's notable that these have even, raised attention. And the thing is that right now we have Democrats in control of the White House and the Senate and the House of Representatives, so full control over Congress and the White House. And we know where the Republicans stand on this. They're horrific. They're monstrous on this. They're bought and paid for by the NRA. They are a wing of the NRA at this point, and they will do nothing. They will do nothing to protect people from these sorts of this kind of violence, and that has become just almost second nature in this country. And so we know where the Republicans stand on this. And the thing about the Democrats, the Republicans, they tell you outright where they stand on this issue, and they let you know outright they don't give a damn about how many people die. They believe that the person's right to own a gun is that freedom is more important than another person's freedom to live and to just have a right to continue to live and to continue to exist. They don't care so much about that freedom, that liberty, as much as they care about the freedom of guns. Why? Because the gun lobby's got a lot of money, right? So they take plenty of cash from the gun lobby, and the Republicans let you know exactly where they stand. But the Democrats have a thing where they claim to be on your side, right? They claim that they're on your side, and but it's clearly at this point, it's platitudes. It's all performative. It's all rhetoric, and it's empty. It's empty rhetoric. It's just virtue signaling at this point with no action to back it up. And people are tired or just fed up with this. How many of these things, these mass shootings, massacres do we have to have in a week, in a day, in a year, in a decade for them to finally do something about just basic common sense legislation that most people agree with, right? I mean, criminal background checks, mandatory background checks for all gun purchases. Like, you don't think that somebody should have to have a background check to make sure that they are not convicted of a violent crime in the past in order to, own a gun, at least be able to show that they've, completed some amount of, psychological evaluation and training in order to, be able to earn back that privilege, because these aren't rights. These are privileges. All of these things are privileges, right? And so we get to decide which privileges we want, and we cut it off somewhere, right? With gun rights, people aren't allowed to own rocket launchers, right? So we're not saying nobody. I'm of the left, where I don't think that banning guns is the solution. Like, I'm not talking about banning guns and taking everybody's guns away. That's not the solution that I advocate for. I do think that we can have a ban on military style assault weapons, right? These things that are essentially military grade weapons. These are human killing machines. They are not, you do not need a weapon that can be turned to an automatic rifle or an automatic, a fully automatic rifle to hunt deer, right? Or to hunt whatever you need to hunt. Like, you're not a real hunter if you need a fully automatic weapon in order to hunt your game. Like, you're not a real hunter, all right? And I'm not, you're not a serious hunter. I'm not addressing you. What these weapons are about, they were designed to maim and destroy human beings, right? They were designed as human killing machines. And these are weapons of war that we're talking about. And we're talking about, people are just calling for a common sense, one, mandatory background checks on all gun purchases, and then two, a ban on assault weapons, these military style assault weapons, fully automatic rifles, and high capacity magazines, right? Because it allows these people to kill so many people in such a short amount of time. And if you read some of the stories or see some of the images of people's bodies after these bullets rip through them, they're so devastating to the human body. So, ER doctors have talked about this. Until you've seen what these weapons can do, you shouldn't be, it's you shouldn't be, so adamantly against some of these reforms that people are talking about. And so it's sad how we have to talk about this and have to tiptoe around this issue, because people on the right will just accuse the left of, oh, you're just trying to take away people's guns, when really the reality is nobody's trying to do that here. We're saying we draw the line somewhere about what we think that people should be allowed to own as a weapon. And we don't say you're not allowed to own grenades and rocket launchers and tanks, like in drones, as an individual private citizen, right? And so the idea, and it says in the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia, right? It's the only place in the entire Constitution that specifically mentions the word regulation, right? It's the only place where you see the word regulate in the entire Constitution, right? So the one regulation that they definitely that the founding fathers believed in, the one place they thought you needed to make sure you regulated, was the ownership of firearms. And they said, it was for the purpose of a well-regulated militia. And if what are the regulations? Back then it was muskets they were dealing with. They weren't thinking about people owning, people aren't allowed to own nuclear bombs or bombs at all, right? And so we draw the line somewhere. We're saying let's move the line a little bit further back where it used to be, right? And so we don't need people to be able to, you shouldn't need assault these military style weapons. But the sad thing is, and the reality is, the Democrats are going to do nothing about this. They're going to virtue signal. They're going to spout out empty platitudes and talk about what they believe is, and how everybody deserves to live, and thoughts and prayers. And we'll get all of that kind of rhetoric from the Democrats. But what we're not going to get, unfortunately, I believe, is any form of action. And it's just based on what I've seen out of them already. I have no hope. I'm not encouraged in any way. There's just no reason for me to believe, as a casual observer of our political system, I guess a slightly above casual observer of our political system, I just don't see where the Democrats don't have the courage to what procedurally what would need to be done to get around a filibuster. You're talking about, you have to get, if you're not going to get around a filibuster, you're talking about having to get 10 Republicans to vote in favor of whatever anti-gun legislation is what they're going to frame it as. But it's really just going to be any kind of common sense gun reform. You're not going to be able to pick up 10 Republican votes on it. So you're going to need, the only way that the Democrats could do it is with only 50 votes. The only way they can do it with 50 votes is if, for legislation like this that doesn't impact the budget, you cannot do it through budget reconciliation. So that process of budget reconciliation is out the window on this. The only way to pass this type of legislation is by what they call nuking the filibuster. They have to get rid of the filibuster. And the filibuster is a process that allows any senator to just say, where they used to have to stand up and talk through it, but now they don't even have to stand up and talk through it. They just say, I intend to commit a filibuster, to do a filibuster against this legislation. And then from that point forward, you have to get 60 votes in order to overcome that, what they call cloture. And so the Democrats have the ability, because they control the House and the Senate right now. If they wanted to, they could pass legislation that removes the filibuster. They can get rid of that rule of the filibuster, and that would allow them to pass legislation with 50 votes. And they could do it if they really believed in this. If the Democratic Party truly believed in protecting people from these mass shootings, they would do that, right? If they truly believed in it. But they won't. They're not going to. They haven't done so already. And they're really not going to. If they do, get rid of the filibuster, it will be at the last minute when nothing will get accomplished afterward. I hope they prove me wrong. Trust me, I really do. I truly hope they prove me wrong on this, but I just don't think that they will, sadly. And so that's that's where we are at this point. We'll have to wait and see. But I know I believe I know how this is going to turn out, sadly, and it's not for the better. We're going to all be outraged by it. This has overwhelming support. These type of regulation, 97% of people support mandatory background checks on on gun purchases. 97% of people in this country, but the 3% that don't are unfortunately the members of Congress and everybody that belongs to the NRA. and they have complete control over this situation. Typically they have complete control of the situation. Sadly, they do not under this circumstance, right? In this circumstance, the Democrats have total control here, and they have all the ability in the world, and they are not bought by the NRA. We know that they are not bought by the NRA. Sadly, they don't have political courage, right? They just lack political courage in any kind of real way. And they, in getting rid of the filibuster would open up the door for them to be expected to pass other legislation that they don't want to have an excuse not to pass. So they need a filibuster in place again until the last minute, until they're ready to, lose in the midterms and Republicans are going to take back control. Then all of a sudden they'll get rid of the filibuster, like they started the process of with Harry Reid in getting rid of the filibuster for Supreme Court and federal judicial nominations. And eventually, they started the process, and then Mitch McConnell completed the process of getting rid of the filibuster under Trump, and they passed, historic numbers of an unprecedented number of judicial picks, federal judicial picks under Trump. And so we have a heavily conservative judiciary, and we run the risk in 2022 and 2024 of losing the House and the Senate and the White House to Republicans because of the lack of action from the Democratic Party, unfortunately, on issues like this. And so it's frustrating, to say the least.